So I am American, so I am circumcised.
Yes.
Yeah.
We happy we got that out of the way quickly.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess with
So
that, I'm going to kick us off. What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Terror Table, a horror movie podcast. I am your host, Mitch Oliver, and normally I have my pal Boozy with me, but he is away this week. But we have a very special guest and a special episode planned for today. Today, we are welcoming one of my friends that I got to know, had the pleasure of getting to know through our mutual experience at Screamfest in LA. And I had a chance to see his insanely beautiful, twisted, fun little short film, Fake Plastic Blood. And today we're going to be welcoming the writer, director, Nathan Gallagher to the show. How's it going, Nathan?
great, great. Thank you so much for having me, Mitch. It's great to catch up as well.
Yeah, man. Like let's just start off with that though. We had this crazy experience together. We had no idea who we were, each other was. We both were invited to participate in Screamfest, and that's something I haven't really been able to talk about too much on the show because I never like it's weird talking about it with people who weren't there.
Yeah.
But I feel like I can speak for the both of us that was one of the best experiences of my life.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and we kind of clicked, met your whole crew. Shout out to the entire Fake Plastic Blood crew. You guys had a whole bunch of people down there, and it was just amazing. It was one of the highlights getting to know you guys,
Yeah, I
and
agree.
specifically talk movies, and that's something you and I did a lot in the final days of Screamfest. And one of those things that we talked about was David Lynch. So today we're going to be discussing, at the end of the episode, we're going to have a full conversation on Mulholland Drive. But before that, I want our listeners and anyone new tuning in to hear the Nathan Gallagher story. So Nathan, you made a short horror film, Fake Plastic Blood. What led you to this point in your life? What made you want to create films, specifically horror films?
Yeah, so I my family started in film a long time ago when I was about probably 11 years old. They started doing like I don't know if you're familiar, but it's called the 48-hour film festival. I
Yeah,
think they have it everywhere.
yeah,
But so my family started doing short films for that, like around 2011, just because my dad was kind of interested in it, and he was always really into films, so he kind of gave me some education in terms of history of watching the best movies, and kind of cultivated my taste a little bit. And then, yeah, when I was about 17, I started making my own films. So Fake Plastic Blood ended up being is like the eighth film I've made. Um, when it comes to like horror, I don't know. I think through watching films, I realized what stories I wanted to tell, and they ended up being psychological, like psychological thriller, pretty much always. And then that blended into horror a little bit. And I think how that blended into horror, kind of to tie it back, be relevant with this episode, was this might sound a little bit weird to some people, but I think David Lynch and Stanley Kubrick got me into horror, and it's for like reasons that I don't think are necessarily attributed to those directors always, but I think that they have a horror side when they make their stuff. It's a little bit more of a psychological horror that I think I was subconsciously inspired by a lot, and that kind of rubbed off in how I made my short films.
yeah, absolutely. And that's something I wanted to talk about today too, is that Mulholland Drive isn't generally known as a straight up horror film.
Uh-huh.
And I think a lot of Lynch's stuff and Kubrick's as well, people hesitate to dub it horror, but there is an underlying tone and aesthetic that goes along with these movies that 100% keeps them in the conversation of horror.
Oh yeah.
Specifically Mulholland Drive too. Like there's we'll get to that, but it's funny because I saw Fake Plastic Blood before we had even really gotten to know each other. And one thing I really immediately took away was I was like, I absolutely saw the influences of films like Mulholland Drive and like Lynchian thrillers, and same with Kubrick. Like you can just tell that you're very into the cerebral side
Oh, that's
of
awesome
like
that you
the
picked that
site.
up. Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks.
man. No, it's great. And I even, there's so many different things like with the color palettes that you play with, and the overall concept of and now it honestly makes so much sense after we started getting to know each other and we talked about Mulholland Drive. It was like, oh, that makes total sense that was such a huge influence on you.
Yeah,
uh
that's top five films for me.
yeah, no, I'm very excited to talk about it. I've wanted to do a David Lynch episode for a while, but it's one of those ones you got to have the right people to do it. So I'm happy that this
For
worked out.
sure. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we've touched base on how you're into Kubrick and Lynch and stuff like that. But I know you're also the kind of guy who can take something away from more mainstream horror. Even like, have you seen anything recently that kind of stood out to you? That
Um, yeah, Jordan Peele's Nope really stood out to me. I
nice,
thought
yeah,
that movie was awesome.
I love it too. I love that one. Yeah, it seems people aren't talking about it the way that they were with Get Out and Us.
Yeah.
Like, and obviously Get Out was like a cultural phenomenon. It's
Mhm.
incredible, but so is Nope. Nope is amazing.
I agree. I think obviously Get Out is a 10 out of 10 and like Us is probably a 9 out of 10. But Nope does something for me that the other two didn't. I think it's there's a way that he approached the horror in that one that landed with me, like particularly with that film.
Yeah.
Uh, I forgot the monkey's name, but Gordo,
Oh,
Gordo,
yeah.
Gordo.
Yeah, no, that scene that's something else. But there's that scene, and there's one that's like clearly he pulled it from Fire in the Sky. I'm not sure if you've seen that. It's a 90s alien film, but it's like that scene scared the hell out of me as a kid. And I think the other reason why it might connect with you too is like so much of Nope is based in like the filmmaking process.
Yeah,
It's
that's actually a good point.
yeah, and like the industry and
Uh-huh.
how people are generally kind of chewed up and spit out, and there's so many like little
Mhm.
things that are like comedic nuances, like how he's wearing a Scorpion King shirt the
Oh
whole
yeah,
movie. And
yeah.
it's like people don't really you don't really think about that. You don't really see that in other films. That's why it felt fresh. I've only seen it the one time, but I am looking forward to watching that one again.
Yeah, me too. I only got to see it in the theater once.
Yeah,
But oh my
no,
goodness. And then the creature also. Am I allowed to spoil it here?
uh no,
Okay,
let
okay, that's fine.
watch Nope. It's an incredible film. Watch
Yeah,
Nope. Let's just
definitely
say that.
recommend. Yeah, it's for sure.
Yeah. One that I wanted to talk about a little bit too is I just watched Smile. Have you had a
Oh,
chance to see it yet?
not yet, but I really, really want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a
So this is
cultural phenomenon in itself right now.
yeah, it's crazy. And so it's written and directed by Parker Finn, who he made two short films and then he got this movie. And then don't I just couldn't get a read on it from the trailer. I was like, a lot of people say it kind of looks like Truth or Dare, like something like that kind of fare, but
Uh-huh.
it's like shot like It Follows, which is another thing we talked about a little bit because you're from
Yes.
Detroit.
Yeah, shout out Detroit.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, Detroit, like It Follows and Barbarian and
Mhm.
Eminem.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen Barbarian yet either, but that was another one because we talked about that in LA and
Yeah,
and it's free right now. I don't know why I haven't gotten around yet to
yeah, I'm
watching it.
curious to hear what you'll think of it because that's
Uh,
one that it plays with both the things I'm talking about here, where it's like very serious and creepy, and then it gets a little leans into like the fun comedic elements of
yeah,
horror, and
that's
that doesn't
something
always
that
work for people.
yeah, that's something that doesn't always work for me. Like full transparency, like horror comedy,
Yeah,
I find it to be like a lot of the time just comedy, but with like some people dying or some gore or something. It's
yeah,
not necessarily horror, but when there's like true horror comedy, like they actually manage to blend the two genres and not just go way or the other. I would be definitely open to taking suggestions in that field. I think.
yeah. I think Barbarian will be a great start.
Okay, for
Checking that
sure.
one out,
Yeah.
but yeah, Smile. I straight up it just didn't really look like my thing. Like I wasn't all that excited to see it. But then after, I think it's so crazy. It's so cool what Parker Finn did, the fact that he made two short films and had this opportunity
Huh.
and people seem to be liking it. So I wanted to give it a shot. And man, I was very pleasantly surprised by Smile. I
Okay.
really liked it. It's the first little bit, I was like, it does feel like this is the kind of thing where if I would have been 14 at the time, or like this is a movie I was watching when, friends were having a sleepover when we were kids and renting it reminds me a lot of The Ring. Have you seen The Ring?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's got a
Okay.
lot of that same kind of, it plays with there's like a story and a plot mechanism that is
Okay.
happening to people, and it's kind of like even it follows, it can be transferred,
Okay,
and
okay.
that generally makes for fun horror movies for a lot of people. And this one, it's really well shot. It is totally like if a silly idea like a Truth or Dare or Countdown or like all these like mainstream Blumhouse releases that they're
Mhm.
making for a younger audience, it feels like that. But if it was made by a guy who loves Ari Aster,
Oh, okay,
um,
cool. It's like
so
lower budget too, right?
yeah, he
Super
made it.
interesting.
They made it look great for what they had.
Okay. What I like to what like sparked my I made me so intrigued with that movie was so like obviously the marketing was really
Mhm.
unique. They took a unique take, and I thought that like their uncanny approach to horror was unique and something that I don't think we get enough of that is the uncanny side of horror. So people like smiling through like crowds of people, someone just staring at
Yeah,
the camera and smiling or something. I like uncanny horror, something that's not necessarily scary when you've like I mean a monster is always scary, but like somebody smiling at you can be scary in a different
well,
instinctual way. I
totally.
I'm so into that. So
Yeah,
I'm really curious to see that movie. I'll text you once I watch that one
I had fun with it, and I recommend it
for
absolutely. I know
sure.
it's on Paramount Plus now.
Oh, okay, cool.
But yeah, so Sosie Bacon, I think her name is. She plays the lead. It's Kevin Bacon's daughter. She's
Okay.
tremendous in it. She's great. But it's funny you said that though, because that's totally something that's played with in Mulholland Drive as well.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
the
yeah,
smiling grandparents characters and like
yeah. Oh my
specifically
God.
the ending. It's like, yeah,
I can't wait to talk about it because I just rewatched it for this podcast.
yeah, I took a deep dive this week again. We'll get there. I just want to touch on a couple other things before we get into, because I think
Uh-huh.
that's gonna be the brunt of this episode. We're gonna talk about Lynch in general
Uh-huh. Yeah,
and
yeah.
Mulholland Drive. But is there anything else that you want to mention at the top of the show here in terms of things that you've seen, or anything, man?
I mean, I'm sure you've plugged your film here. If you haven't seen The Druid's Hand yet, that one, I mean, like my bias towards liking Mitch aside, was one of my favorites I saw at Screamfest. Screamfest had so many cool short films. I think I got a new appreciation for short films through Screamfest.
Thanks, man.
I
Same.
never really watched a lot of short films. I loved that one. If you guys haven't seen it, you gotta see that one because
Yeah. Hopefully early new year we'll have it
okay, cool.
up
Yeah.
for people to see. But yeah,
It's
that's
actually another
awesome.
question I was going to ask you because I wanted to show that film to some people that I knew because I just liked it a lot. I wanted to show some of the ones that I remembered standout films from Screamfest. That was one of them.
Thanks, man.
Definitely, yeah, absolutely. I know this is particularly a horror podcast, so I haven't been watching like as far as like where I've been at right now. It's like it wasn't necessarily horror. Like the I just watched All Quiet on the Western Front, and I liked that one.
We've talked about that 3 weeks in a row now, so it
Oh,
gets a
really?
pass. Yeah, because
Okay.
yeah, my co-host saw it a couple weeks ago. I watched it last week. I loved it.
I
I
I
was
really liked that one too.
Yeah, I
I
was
have a
blown
thing for
away.
World War One. I always had a thing for World War One. I think it's like it's an environment that I just want to see more. So I that movie was so welcome to me, and the performances and everything was amazing. The way that they recreated the actual history of that was just brilliant, especially from the German perspective too.
Yeah,
Not something you see often. You see it from the winner's perspective a lot more.
totally. And yeah, I love like what they do with their uniforms, and like how like you kind of see where the uniform begins and the process it goes through, being
Oh, like
have
as
bullets. Yeah, there's like
yeah,
bullet holes, it's in the mud, and then they clean it up, stitch up the bullet
uh,
holes, and re-tag it for the next
yeah,
one. It's so
yeah,
haunting. And there's
yeah.
one scene that's obviously in a trench with a tank that I was like, I think I'm
Oh
never
my
gonna
god,
forget that image.
yeah, that was like
Wild.
oh my god, it's so rare that they'll dump that amount of money into a World War One film. Actually, that might be the only one. That's probably the only one I can think of. So just I highly recommend that. As
Yeah.
far as Netflix originals go, it's worth
Oh,
throwing
one
them
of
a
the
little
better
bit of
ones, I'd say.
yeah,
Yeah.
throwing them a little bit of praise there because they're not usually like that. So
Yeah. No, absolutely.
yeah, that
That's
one was
awesome,
worth
man.
mentioning.
Um, Yeah, the last one I'm going to mention before we move on is I watched The Addiction from 1995. Have you ever seen this?
No, I haven't.
It's a legendary director, Abel Ferrara, who he's the voice behind movies like Bad Lieutenant, King of New York, Miss 45, Snake Eyes, the original, not the Nick Cage one, or the
Okay.
G.I. Joe movie.
Okay.
But
Okay.
yeah, he actually recently, I haven't seen it yet, but he did a biopic on Pasolini, who did like Sallow. I'm not sure if you've seen that, but
No. Okay.
I'm curious to see it because yeah, Abel Ferrara has made hundreds of movies at this point, but
Okay.
I think I'm very into. I wanted to mention this because this is one I think you would get a lot out of. It's a vampire film, but not in the way that you think it is.
I
It's
like
very
vampires.
Yeah, I love vampires too, and I'm like currently like trying to crack one myself.
Oh,
And
okay.
I this movie is definitely a massive influence on like the kind of stuff I want to explore. But it's have you seen A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night?
Oh, I was recommended this
You would
multiple
love that
times. I
movie.
still haven't. Okay.
Yeah, you would love it. But The
Okay.
Addiction is essentially like you can see the influence that this movie had on A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night.
Okay.
It's a black and white film. It's Christopher Walken and Lily Taylor. She's
Okay.
incredible in this film. But yeah, it's just a really haunting, beautiful black and white crime horror film, which is like it's a vampire tale, but not in the way that not your general idea of vampires. The concept that you know from vampires isn't all here. It's different. It's a little fresh. It's 100% an art house film. I know it gets. I've read a bunch of reviews where people find it to be quite pretentious,
Okay.
but that's one thing you and I
No,
also
I like,
connected on.
yeah. Yeah,
It's like,
totally.
you know what?
Actually,
Fuck it. We like pretentious shit. Like it's like
yeah. No,
it
I'm actually really intrigued. I like pretentious stuff. That leads me to actually, I want to bring up one more movie before, if we can
yeah.
move.
No,
Yeah, before we
absolutely.
move on.
This is one, it's on Shutter right now, but it's a
Okay.
mature poetic script. It's ripe with social commentary. Yeah, it's I've always been pulled towards like the philosophy and the deeper meanings behind movies, and I know that I don't
Uh-huh.
watch I'm the guy who I can look at a film like this and really want to dissect and peel back the layers, but then I can also throw on Beavis and Butthead do the universe or whatever,
Yeah. Right,
and
right,
I'll
right.
I'll have fun. Like I'm not married to one genre, but
That
this one,
sounds like, sorry, go
it,
ahead.
it's the kind of stuff that excites me these days. And yeah, I highly
Yes.
recommend checking out The Addiction.
That sounds like it's right in my alley. Like,
It
right.
it absolutely is. Like it's got
That's
Nathan written
exciting.
all over it.
That's
Which one
exciting.
were you going to talk about?
So I'm really curious if you've seen this one because I randomly stumbled upon it on the internet somehow and it came out in 2010 and like there's basically nothing about it online, which is really interesting to me. It's called Beyond the Black Rainbow.
Yeah, that's a Panos
Oh wait.
Cosmatos.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So I had, if anyone knew it, it'd be you. I hadn't heard anything about this film, and like it is a good segue from like stuff that or something that people can find pretentious. You know what I mean?
Totally. What
Um,
have you seen Mandy?
no, I haven't, but I did that one. I did hear about, and I really wanted to, and that's on my list now because this film kind of like
Oh
took me
man.
by surprise.
So you did see it and you liked it? Beyond the Black?
I did like it, so
Yeah.
I think that there are it is we could talk about some flaws in the storytelling, but I don't think that that's where his I don't know if that's where the filmmakers
Not where his focus was at.
intentions, yeah,
Yeah.
his focus was at, and that's something that I can like appreciate with it. I think that the visuals were just okay. So the stylistic approach that he took in general, so um, sound and visuals, and the way he directed the actors and everything was so rich, and I felt like, and this is actually something that I was going to bring up naturally, like talking about Mulholland Drive, but somewhere where like the style and the form starts to um, starts to muddy up the overall objectives of the film. Like where's the sweet spot where with style like full stylistic approach and telling your story thematically? Where do you get to that point of you're going to start alienating the audience? And I think that film does a little bit, but it for me, it's like, I don't
That's
know.
such a huge thing to do with Lynch as well, though. Like
Yeah.
Lynch does the same thing where the style is the substance.
Right.
And that's, I can understand why that would frustrate a lot of people and it wouldn't be everyone's bag. But
Yeah.
I'm one of those people that I also highly like enjoy that kind of stuff. Like when it's clear that that's what they're setting out to do, I'm on board. Like it's
Right.
like when you're watching Mandy or Beyond the Black Rainbow, it's like you are just watching a moving painting. And that
Yeah.
sounds kind of up your own ass to say, but it's true. Like he's very much wanted to convey a message through the visuals,
Right. Right.
not necessarily just the dialogue. And I know that's something that Lynch does a lot as well.
Yeah.
And
It's telling the story and the themes through the visuals. And that's something everybody does, but every director does that. It's at different levels though.
yeah,
It's interesting.
yeah, exactly. Well, if you like that one, I highly recommend getting to Mandy ASAP.
Uh-huh.
Mandy
Yeah, no.
is Mandy's a blast.
Okay, yeah, that one was on my list for sure. I mean, that was on my list since 2018 when I saw the promotional material because it just looked insane. So,
Yeah,
and then I
no,
found this one randomly, and it's just yeah,
it is nuts. It is nuts. And
that's exciting.
yeah, I guess before we go into Mulholland Drive, let's just talk a little bit. Like, what do you got? What do you got coming up? You're finishing school. You're finishing up university right now, film school.
Yeah. So I'm in my last semester now. I'm working on a feature script. Uh, yeah, still pretty in the beginning process of like that. I'm in the beginning of the writing process, I guess. And then I have a short film that I want to develop as well. I'm a little bit up in the air of where to go, kind of waiting for just inspiration to answer that question for me because I'm not exactly sure what the best move is for like time and resources
Yeah,
into which projects to follow. So, but I'm just kind of developing ideas. So yeah, I want to make a feature
yeah, of
ultimately. I
course.
just don't know how to get there.
Yeah. No, but that's great to hear that yeah, the only way that you'll ever get a feature made is if you have the feature ready to be made. So
Yeah,
even
exactly.
if now's not the time, or if you need to get another short under, like you said, you go with the resources that you have. It's just awesome to know that you're pushing forward and you'll have that. You can't sell a script that doesn't exist.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. That was the
it,
thought process. Yeah.
yeah, and I know there's a big difference between a lot of the people that you meet at something like Screamfest and other people who are kind of trying to do this is uh, there's a lot of work that goes into it before any of the work actually gets done, if that makes any sense. Like,
Yeah.
having the scripts, like if you see it as a waste of time to write a script that could never be made, you're just dooming yourself from the get-go because
Yeah.
you'll never have anything to work off of if you're I
Exactly.
don't know. There's my unsolicited advice.
No,
But
I completely agree though, especially in terms of just I mean, even if so I was a little bit struggling with my feature idea right now in terms of like it might be just too big, like in
mhm,
terms of someone giving me um, an amount of money to make a first feature. I don't know if it would cover something like this just because I'm a unknown director at the time, like getting a first debut feature budget might just be too big. Um, but then like back to your point, I think it's important just to like keep writing where the inspiration is
mhm,
because even if that's not my first feature, it'll be a script, and each script you write, I mean, gets better, right?
exactly. Yeah.
So
No, I love to hear it. And yeah, man, could just we have already talked about this off air, but congratulations on everything that you've achieved this year.
oh, thanks
And
so much.
it's so cool that we were able to meet and share that experience and get to
Yeah,
meet your crew and your family. Your parents are absolutely lovely. And yeah, no, it was just a really cool experience to be able to share that together.
yeah.
And I can't wait to see what you do next. So
Thanks,
uh,
and likewise. Really, I was gonna wait till like afterwards, but I'm so looking forward to hearing about like your projects that you're working on.
thanks, man. Yeah, no,
That's
well,
exciting.
we know we'll keep in touch. I know we this is stuff we'll talk about off air.
Okay,
Stuff
yeah,
to do with like,
yeah.
got to get our crew together again.
Right,
All the
yeah.
people like Matt and Annalise and
Yeah,
Jensen,
yeah,
all those
exactly.
amazing people. But
yeah, that was my favorite part about Screamfest, was meeting you guys, honestly.
agreed. Yeah, it was awesome. But how about you say, let's dive into, we'll take a little break here, but then when we come back, we're going to dive into the world of David Lynch and Mulholland Drive.
Cannot wait.
All right, we'll see you all on the other side.
I can't believe it. I'm just so excited to be here. I'm in this dream place.
This one comes highly recommended.
Dream place. What are you doing?
Get out of the car.
Yeah, the girl is still missing.
What's wrong?
I don't know who I am.
I wonder where you were going. Mulholland Drive. Come on, it'll be just like in the movies. We'll pretend to be someone else.
This is all an illusion.
You want to know who you are, don't you?
Where's this going?
Mulholland Drive.
It's been a very strange day.
Getting stranger.
And welcome to our main feature presentation, or we are going to be discussing Nathan Gallagher's pick of the week, Mulholland Drive from 2001, which was written and directed by David Lynch. It stars Naomi Watts, Laura Herring, Justin Theroux. There's tons of other great character actors in here. Robert Forster, Patrick Fischler, like people who you see in a lot of David Lynch's other works. He's a guy who likes to bring back his crew. He hires who he likes, who he knows. There's so many things to talk about with this man, and it's about time. We're nearing 250 episodes of the Terror Table, and it's time for us to dig into the world of David Lynch. So let's kick off with that. Nathan, what is it about? What made you want to choose? Like when we started talking, it was instantly. It was like, which movie will we talk about? It was going to be Eyes Wide Shut or Mulholland Drive, which I love both of those movies.
Yeah.
But I love Eyes Wide Shut. Don't get me wrong. I love it. But I've always wanted to do an episode on this film in particular. Why did it have an impact on you? What's it about this movie that speaks to you so much?
I think that his approach to the story, and yes, the story, so form aside, I think his approach to the story was, so absolutely unique. And whether it exactly portrayed his, like what he intended or not, I think it was so ballsy in the first place and so brilliantly represented, with a few exceptions.
Yeah.
Brilliantly portrayed. And I just love the overarching theme of the movie. I love it so much. I think it's a perfect example of a film that it communicates its ideas less it's from a feeling that you get while watching the scenes. I think he constructs the scenes with the way he directs the actors, the sounds, sometimes music, and then like the visuals, that all work together in a feeling when you watch it. I think there's a couple other directors that are relevant in that conversation as well. But like rather than using all of these techniques like sound, music, and direction and all that stuff to portray the story, he uses it to portray the themes.
Mm-hmm. I
think that's one of the things that makes that movie so unique.
Yeah, it's the themes and the feelings that he makes, right. And that's something it's been no secret. Like David Lynch he's one of my favorite just personalities to like watch in interviews and stuff. Like he's so funny, and I love that he won't ever do anything that he doesn't want to do, and he'll never answer a question that he doesn't want to answer. Yes. And I like that about him. And I know some people see it as pretentious, but I don't feel like he has ever given off. He has never given off the vibe that he thinks that he's smarter than the audience. It's whether the audience wants to go along with what he wants to show or not. It's like he's very much he's based as he was originally a fine artist, And that makes so much sense, especially when you see his paintings and the stuff that he's made. It makes so much sense that this man creates these kinds of stories. And also, I think like what I notoriously don't like dream logic most of the time, but there's very few exceptions. And David Lynch is someone who frequently dives into dream logic. But I think it's the people who try to be too much like Lynch that aren't Lynch. They can't really pull it off the way that he does. It comes off as disingenuous, and like it never feels that way in Mulholland Drive. Or my personal favorite piece of his, like, Mulholland Drive is probably my favorite movie he's made. But I'm a massive Twin Peaks fan.
Yes, same.
I love
absolutely.
Twin Peaks. And like Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me is one of the most disturbing movies I've ever seen, in the sense that the feeling that movie gave me, it's like, you know, the Bonnie Aaron's, her character, the homeless person in Mulholland Drive. It's like that sequence, but for 2 hours.
I agree.
And it's just so tough. It's so blood curdling and stomach churning hearing Laura Palmer just scream for 2 hours.
Oh my, that one scene with Leland. That one scene. But and that's something that Twin Peaks doesn't necessarily feel like. So it's interesting to get that film was so standalone with the same characters. Totally. I am a huge Twin Peaks fan. I absolutely love it. It was my favorite TV show until Atlanta recently, but I love that.
I still haven't seen Atlanta. I've heard it's incredible. I need to get on incredible. That. Yeah, my coworkers keep on talking about there's a Goofy episode. Oh no,
kind of,
it, but yeah, they said it's amazing. But no, but that's the thing too, is I'm sure you know this too, but for our audience, that Mulholland Drive was originally meant to be a spin-off, or like a standalone TV series, like connected to Twin Peaks. It was going to be the story of Audrey Horne going to Hollywood, and it works so well even thinking about that.
I actually didn't know it was connected to those characters. I knew it was going to be a TV show and he wanted it to be episodic originally. But I didn't know it was connected to the Twin Peaks. That's interesting.
Yeah, originally it was going to be Audrey making it to her tale of making it to Hollywood. And she's one of my favorite characters in Twin Peaks too. Like,
I agree.
That's a show that just has 500 characters and all of them are my favorites. Like so many good, unique characters.
Yeah,
but it totally makes sense. Like the film really does have that otherworldly, like Lynch universe feeling and aesthetic.
Right.
Like it feels like these characters could only exist in the world of Lynch, and that's what I love so much about his work.
And it's also genuine in that world.
Yeah,
it's like you said, how you mentioned he was a fine artist and a painter before he turned to film, and I always love this story that I heard him tell about how he was staring at a painting and it made him feel something. And through what he was feeling, looking at this painting, he starts to see the painting move and change. And that's what made him want to get into filmmaking.
And that explains Eraserhead entirely.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's so interesting because like it's about when you watch a David Lynch movie, what do you feel? And it's similar to when you look at a painting that strikes something within you. It's a feeling. It's something that you can only achieve through, like, I don't know. It's impossible to define. It's art, you know.
No, totally. And
like, have you take that approach always?
Yeah, no, and there's like some of my recent favorite movies do that as well. And like, once again, just at the running the risk of losing listeners thinking that like it sound up my own ass or anything like that, but Jonathan Glazer's Under the Skin is have you seen that film?
No, I haven't. No.
Tonight you got to watch Under the Skin.
Okay,
like that's gonna be your new favorite movie. Under the Skin.
I believe you too.
Like, for real, man. Like that is absolutely gonna be. Man, that movie's gonna rock you. But
awesome.
It's such a prime example of like, clearly Glazer was inspired by Lynch as well, and he gets it, he understands it, he makes it work. But then there's some films that take these same approaches, but it's not genuine, so it comes off as boring. And
it
feels like you're watching an inside joke that you don't know any of. It's like, yeah, it makes sense to you, and obviously Eraserhead makes no sense. but that's kind of what makes it brilliant. Is
Right.
it
Yeah.
was originally a 20-page script for a short film that he stretched out into a feature that he made. That movie shot for like 9 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so crazy thinking about, like, they had to get a new DOP on that movie because they ran out of money to pay the one guy. And when you watch Eraserhead, it's like, what possibly took this fucking long? But
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, true.
getting to
Yeah.
know
It's
Lynch,
like two locations. Yeah.
yeah, actually this week too, as it's a annual thing that I do, is I get obsessive. Like, there's certain things that it used to be, honestly, I do love the Harry Potter series. Like, I always watch those at Christmas, but I've now seen them so many times that I have different rotations in the year. Like, I just went through my before trilogy rotation, where I do that like once a year, and I just get in that mood for a week. And
Okay.
this week, really thanks to you bringing this to the table, I went down a Lynch rabbit hole again. I always do it, and I read his book, Room to Dream.
Oh,
There's an audiobook version of it on Audible that I highly recommend for anyone who's
okay.
interested in his work, because it's between him and, it's like one chapter is read by, they cover the same events of the same years. Like, it's someone doing a biography on Lynch, and then all of the topics that she touches on in the next chapter, it's from his perspective, talking about the same things. And it's amazing because there's never the same story told twice. That's what is so brilliant, is like, just hearing Lynch describe his stories about, even like, there's some really great tidbits about him making Dune, and Blue Velvet, which is another favorite of mine out of his filmography.
Same. That's my second favorite.
Yeah, same here. And Blue, what's it called? Sorry. What's the other one? Lost Highway. But Mulholland Drive, they talk about a lot in that book as well. But yeah, I think I lost my train of thought of where I was going. I just got excited because
and just to touch on something that you brought up, like about how some other people don't necessarily, like, when they're inspired by David Lynch, I think, and they try to implement that inspiration into their own work, it's a little bit confused sometimes, because I think the thing with David Lynch, and something that makes his work kind of like ethereal on a different level, is you watch it, and I mean, everybody who has seen Mulholland Drive probably didn't have any idea what the hell they just watched their first time.
Yeah.
But it's like, you can tell that there is intention behind it. That was something that just struck me so much with his work, and I'm like able to articulate it now. But like, I had no idea what the hell that movie was trying to say my first time watching it. I think I was like 16 or something. I had no idea. I was just like,
oh, it's way too heavy for that. But it's
also true. Yeah.
It's heavy, but it's also, like most of his other work, you can still, like, I watched Twin Peaks, some of it when I was younger, and I clearly didn't get it, but I was still entertained by it.
Right. It's like, you don't have to get it to understand that there is intention behind it. And even with
it still
those
tells
crazy,
a story.
Right. Those crazy things that happened in Eraserhead, like the worms coming out of the ceiling or whatever, and then the girl in the vent and all that stuff. It's like, he had that idea to represent something. He didn't put that in there just to confuse people or make people like, oh, this is a weird movie. That was representing something to him. He would never tell anybody what it was, but it meant something to him in that story.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And like, so yeah, that brings me, let's talk a little bit about, so what are because this is a movie that has been theorized to death. Like, it's people, and that's one of the things that's so joyous about his films, and specifically Mulholland Drive, is trying to find the different meanings as to what, like, like I said, I love being able to just watch a movie, turn your brain off, and have some fun. But I also love studying intent of why each of these decisions was made and what it could represent. And he's such an iconic filmmaker in the sense that, with our lead, Naomi Watts' character, she, like, how she finds the key. And there's all these like little symbols, so it's like, okay, this is clearly going to come back eventually, and it does. But what is your interpretation of Mulholland Drive?
Yeah, this is the fun part. I'm curious to compare ours. Okay, so I watched this movie today. So with my theory, there are a couple issues, which is why I'm looking forward to discussing this, because with my theory, she was dreaming for the entirety of the film until she goes through the box, which is when she wakes up. And then after that sequence, there's like a third act where he's explaining how terrible her life is in reality and all these decisions that she made that compounded to make her absolutely hate her life. And in her dream, she is imagining a better way that all of these events played out. So I think we're allowed to spoil this one, obviously.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Okay.
We're going to dig right in deep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so she fell in love with Rita's character in real life. And that's stuff that happens in the third act with her falling in love with the director is that is real life. And all of those people that she sees at the dinner party, that dinner party did happen. And she sees these random people and they stick in her subconscious and showed up in her dream because they stuck in her subconscious, and they were all different people in her dream, different characters, because it's the world that she wanted to happen. It's the this how she wanted that sequence of events to play out. And like so that explanation could answer a lot of the scenes, why they happen. And then there's a few that just still stick out and don't make any sense.
Yeah.
in that context.
Yeah. I'm curious to get to those, but I'm very similar in my take on it. My take specifically this time around is that the whole film is about the price of dreams and what you, the toll it takes on you when specifically under the lens of fame and Hollywood and chasing that kind of recognition, chasing that sort of lifestyle. And I think a lot of it, like, I also agree that I think most of the film is a dream, and it's her trying to justify the mania that she spiraled into that led to her having her lover killed, and trying to justify as why she would have done that. And it's almost like she's gaslighting herself
Exactly.
in terms of, just coming to terms with like the price of like she spirals into mania over this obsession with Hollywood and specifically Rita. Even like you said, like with that theory, some of the stuff still doesn't add up. Specifically one thing, like this is jumping way ahead, but the one that I've noticed, even reading other people's theories online, is like the characters, the for lack of better terms, the old folks that are in like the back of the cab. Who are they? What do they represent? And why are they maniacally cackling and laughing and chasing her in her house and then shrinking down to little people?
Right. Yeah.
Like my take is those are absolutely her parents.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that makes sense either.
either her parents, because it doesn't explicitly say ever, even when you see them in the beginning, does it? So either her parents, or maybe you could speculate like just how the older generation would judge her for her decisions, or like just
absolutely
level. Like how they would judge her for the direction she took her life, and now that she is a failure, all of these things that she wanted to happen, she ended up failing, and now it's like that judgment could be on her. And also like I always think this when it comes to films that you have to really dig deep and analyze. It's like how much of a possibility is it? And I'm not taking any stance here. I'm genuinely I don't know, but how much of a possibility is it that David Lynch would just put something in there because it was scary to him? And not necessarily like,
I think absolutely. If you've seen Twin Peaks: The Return, your question is answered right there.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. Absolutely, like Bob's head floating in the.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Like, and he's always been that way. He's always thrown in things that just, and that actually brings up another good point, is that I think a lot of this film, after reading his book, I feel like a lot of this was him kind of working through some of his own personal shit. Like the whole relationship between Justin Theroux and Rita, I feel there's a little bit of him kind of coming to terms with the way that he treated his first wife, in the sense that what a lot of people don't know is he fell in love with on Blue Velvet, he fell in love with Isabella Rossellini, They fell in love in the shooting
Is she the woman in the apartment?
She, like, in Blue Velvet, she's she's Dorothy Ballins, like the main character.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like some of that was a little self-referential. I could be entirely wrong. But that's something I kind of took from it. And yeah, it really is self-reflective in the terms of how you treat people in this industry. Yeah. And the price that people pay to want to be a player in this game.
I think you're highlighting a good point that I don't think I thought of as much, like the setting of Hollywood and what relevance that has, and her wanting to break into the film industry in particular, rather than a different setting. It is interesting. I didn't necessarily, but yeah, from a larger thematic standpoint, I think you're definitely onto something there with how, especially with Camilla, yeah, especially with her character, how her character treats Betty at the end, and how everything felt like transactional.
Yep, it definitely did. And I feel like there's a lot of lines in between the two of them as the story progresses that kind of show a little bit of Betty being like facetious and jealous of the success that her lover's having.
Yeah.
When they both set out to do the same thing from the beginning. And there's like, she even makes comments at the dinner scene about how Rita's the lead, but Betty has more lines and this kind of stuff, And I think that's another theme that's tackled in this just monolith of a movie.
There's too many themes, I think.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, it is just a very entertaining movie. I feel like it works without it. Even it will not make total sense, even to the people like us who are trying to dissect everything. But unlike Eraserhead, I feel like you can watch, and I like Eraserhead, but this is just clearly a better movie. Like I
completely agree.
Yeah, it's a great story that works, and it eventually divulges into the cream of the crop Lynchian territory, where, like we just mentioned, how the old folks shrink down and are chasing her around the apartment, and there's all the strobe lights, and like that's such a Lynch thing that he's done in so many of his films, is like simulates lightning in a room, and then the darkness of her, like there's all the fog, and it's representing her shooting her brains out.
I don't know how that film was marketed when it came out, because I was 1 year old, but how is that not a horror movie? How is that not a psychological thriller or horror movie? Like, that's objectively what Mulholland Drive is.
Totally.
A psychological thriller.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is in it, but it has scenes of deep terror, like, and that's why we've very rarely gone off into like the fringe territories of horror on this show. We generally try to stick with like the exact genre, but this is one, though, that I think that it does enough to still be justified. If I was working at the video store like I did back in the day, I wouldn't put this under the horror section. But it has those moments that are scarier than some of the like, there's some genuinely terrifying moments in this film, and just the imagery it's iconic.
I consider myself a horror filmmaker because I was inspired by these movies.
Yeah,
that aren't considered horror movies. But God, that scene is horrifying. The scene in the theater, which I'm sure we'll get around to and talk about that.
Talk about it right now.
Yeah, that scene is really scary to me. I mean, it's like the atmosphere that he builds in that scene is like it's an unknown part of her subconscious, and there's no use in trying to categorize it or understand this part of her mind. It's just simply an atmosphere. It's completely unknown, impossible to understand. I think that scene is like it's scary on like on just a subconscious level. He was definitely intending to scare you in that scene.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel like he kind of does that in all of his movies.
Yeah,
like totally. All of them have scenes like that, Specifically Twin Peaks: The Return.
Yeah,
That third season is just, it's absolutely insanity.
yeah, true. Yeah, I love it. But it goes completely off the rails at some points.
Yeah, and I feel like all of his movies kind of do, but that's why I think that this one in particular is arguably his best work. Because it like we've said already, it works as just a movie, and even the story, it doesn't make it all doesn't make sense all the way through for a lot of people, I'm sure, but it's entertaining front to back.
Yeah, yeah,
What are some other theories that you have on Mulholland Drive?
yeah. There's individual scenes that I find myself trying to like fit into that explanation that I made for it. Like for example, the cowboy.
Yeah.
What what where does that fit in other than so okay, this brings up like a good segue to that can connect a bunch of these. She's in her dream world. She's an absolutely brilliant actress. That scene when she auditions with the older man and she does that. Um, I hate you. I hate us both. That scene.
Yeah.
She's like that scene is just palpable. She's an absolutely incredible actress. She would have nailed these scenes when she goes in to see the women who are auditioning and singing, and it's the girl that they're forcing him to cast as the lead, and she's auditioning, but the director looks over at her. She has a naturalness about her that makes her so. Just a brilliant actress. She should be the one on top, but she's not. The only reason she's not is there's this overarching um, organization, whatever, the guys with the money behind this film that are pulling all the strings. That's the only reason she's not getting what she wants. Like that's the only reason that other girl got it was because they forced the director to pick that girl instead of him naturally picking her. And so full circle to the cowboy. What is the cowboy other than so obviously we fitting in there some type of person working with this with these guys that have all this money, forcing the director to do to make the decisions they want him to make. But like, let's be real, there's more to the cowboy than that. You know what I mean? And I don't know exactly.
Well, I think one of the things that's so interesting about the cowboy in particular is that he shows up before in a different, like he's just a background character. And like, so what I think it is that he's just a person that she saw, and he stood out to her because he's a cowboy. He stands
at the party, you mean?
Yeah. And he's just in the background, but then she uses him as the vessel to explain to herself that theory that she has, like there's like the more grand picture. This is where she's like really starting to spiral and starting to try and justify where we know the story's going to go, because she knows from the beginning, because we're watching her dream. And I feel like he's just the vessel to convey that side of the story. And that's kind of the most significant part about him. And I think that part of him just being like a character in the background is what makes it so significant.
He's like portrayed as almost an otherworldly being, and it's so interesting. I love that scene so much because the light is off, and then as he walks up, the light flickers on. It's like he brings with him this charge, this like energy with him, and it's like it's so interesting. And it could just be like we talked about earlier, Lynch, and it's dream logic also, but Lynch just wanting to have a scene, write this dialogue, write this character that is intimidating and extremely intimidating in a weird, unexplainable way. But I just love how I just love that scene. I love how he built the atmosphere around that. It's just wonderful. I love the cowboy. And if you notice, he says, and I don't know what stance to take on this, but he says, if you do good, you'll see me once more. If you do bad, you'll see me twice more, something like that. Yeah. And you end up he shows up twice more in the film past that. It's it's curious if there might have been some intention behind there. The audience ends up seeing him 2 more times. Did we do bad in some way?
Mm-hmm.
Do we do bad encouraging this, like,
We play a role in it. We
play
play
a
a role
role
in the system.
right, in the system that drove her, the lead character, to madness. Like,
Yeah. No, I think absolutely, and that's why, so much of this is clearly it has to be a commentary on the industry to begin with, and
yeah,
especially at this point, Lynch had so many experiences as. Let's also quickly mention that it is so wild that a director like David Lynch could have these mainstream movies that were getting recognized by the Oscars. Even it makes no sense.
I've been asking myself that question for so long now.
Like
Yeah,
now when we see those voices come out, they come in the form of like a Panos Cosmatos who did
exactly.
Mandy and Beyond and like they will never be in like the cultural zeitgeist the way that Lynch was. Like it's crazy, but I think a big part of that too was his connection to Dune. And I'm not sure how much you know about the story behind like how that movie just destroyed him, and it wasn't meant for him.
Mhm.
Honestly, I like David Lynch's Dune, but not for like I don't know. I just think I like Lynch's brain, so it's
Yeah,
entertaining for me. Is it a perfect movie? Far from it, but I think he's always been vocal about how he'll never do anything where he doesn't have final cut again,
hmm,
because that's what happened with Dune. He doesn't need to be a paid for hire director. He doesn't need to go like he's doing these things because he loves it. He wants to tell
yeah,
his stories. And that's not a luxury that people really have these days. Like a lot of like let's be real here. If either of us were offered a job to direct a film that we don't believe fully in the script, you wouldn't immediately be like, no, I'm not doing it because of my integrity. It's you kind of need to do that to get to the next step so that you can
right.
start making the stuff that you really want to make.
The landscape
Because
has
the only
definitely
way,
changed.
yeah, and like but Lynch has never had to worry about that. And I think that's a conversation that he has a lot in this movie, and like a lot of the meanings behind it all boil down to his experience with Hollywood.
Hmm.
And that's also I also like that we're talking about this as we met in Hollywood. So
Yeah,
we had that experience,
yeah,
and I remember me and Jesse were taking a Uber to Universal Studios, and I was just like I think the night before we were out drinking, like you do every night there,
the Japan
and
house, wasn't it? Yeah,
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 and then I like look up and I see the sign. It was like Mulholland Drive. I'm like, ooh, I was such a tourist. I had to
yeah.
pull up my phone to take a picture. I'm like, why'd I take a picture of a street sign?
No, it's
But
not just a street sign.
no,
Yeah,
totally. And there's so much there's a lot of significance that like I don't know how much this actually feeds into it, because I just know I've heard Lynch talk about how there was like a famous incident with Jack Nicholson where he garnered the nickname Mulholland Man because he took a golf club to like one of his agents, or like there was a producer, he shattered someone's windshield on Mulholland Drive.
oh,
And I think that also I could be very much reaching here, but having an actor kind of snap that could have probably played a little bit of like a little proved to be a little bit of influence on what he's trying to convey with the film.
yeah.
It's
I mean, there is a scene where the director smashes their car in the beginning with the golf club.
exactly,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So and that's what I think he was kind of being definitely referential to the times.
yeah,
And but it's crazy that the movie is at this point what 21 years old,
yeah,
22 years old, yeah, and it still rings true, so much of it. Like there's uh that just essentially I feel like I'm repeating myself now at this point, but like the price of Hollywood, and for a lot of
yeah.
these people who are in it for the wrong reasons.
I do think one of my big draws to that film before I started really, or I think I saw this before I started really delving into analyzing films, like from a thematic standpoint and stuff. But one of the things that drew me to it, like before all that, was like it's like insider feeling of Hollywood. I just think it portrays it a really, really genuinely, and it obviously does because Lynch was there; he would know. And how it portrays the director, and how they talk to the director, and how they treat him, and how they would end up forcing him to do what their bidding, and it always just felt so genuine, and it adds so much to the thematic storytelling of that film, just setting of Hollywood, and I love that so much. He's been my favorite character in that film since the beginning. I just
say again. You cut out there for a second. Which character?
I love the director character so
Justin
much.
Theroux.
I forgot. Oh yeah, Adam. Adam something. Yeah. I just love him. It always felt so genuine. It was like an insider look of the life of a Hollywood director, which I've kind of been interested in for a while because I wanted to do that. It just felt so genuine. I love his character, even though it's just a plot device. He's awesome.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's great, and that's another thing I love about Lynch is he has notoriously cast non-actors in a lot of his roles just because he gets a feeling about someone. He also he has cast so many people who didn't even they don't need to read lines for him. He just has a conversation with them and that's enough. And I really like that approach for him. It doesn't work for everyone, obviously, but he finds a way to make it work. But there's a story about him even having Justin Theroux come in to meet with him that day, and he had like the messy hair and he looks the way that he does in the film. And apparently Lynch, like from that moment, he's like, that's him. This is like, don't change a thing about yourself. This is what I want.
That's awesome.
Thoreau is a great actor, and he crushes it. Everyone in this film is tremendous. Yeah,
totally.
Do you have anything else you want to talk about in terms of Mulholland Drive?
The diner scene I think is worth talking about, and the way he builds the atmosphere in that scene.
Are you talking about like the opening? Because there's two diner scenes. Are we talking about the one where it eventually leads to the homeless person?
Yeah. So not the one where she's talking to the hitman.
Yeah.
Which I think the hitman is worth bringing up also.
Totally. I think both of those scenes actually correlate. Like I think that they're having, that was one thing I'm totally paraphrasing here, but and that's like in the early first act of the film with those two characters. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he says something along the lines of like, I had a dream about this place. Well, it was the second dream I've had. They were both the same, but one was light and one was dark. And I think that that's totally clearly commenting on Betty, the blonde, and then my God, why am I drawing a blank? Jesus. Rita. Rita. And then it's, you're watching, it's two stories that are technically playing out. It's the one that actually happened and then the dream logic. And I find that really interesting. But what did you take from it?
That is so interesting because I didn't like put that together with that line in particular.
Keep in mind, I've seen this movie like 8 times at this point, and like I just picked up on that this time. And I picked up, you find new things because you want to theorize like what it could mean and everything. And that one stood out to me is that one was light, one was dark. And
it felt like they're clearly paralleled. Like, so what is? I guess the question comes down to. So obviously she met that real hitman in real life at that diner. That diner stuck with her in her subconscious. Something bad happened in that diner in the sense of she made that decision that ended up killing her love. So something bad happened in that diner. That is about as far as my interpretation of that scene went. They go into like behind the dumpster, and that creature's there, that representation of like a dark side of her, the dark side of her that she let win in that moment, that she let destroy something for her that she ended up like truly, truly regretting. I have no idea why it's the two men in that scene in her dream. I don't know why that was relevant or how that is relevant, I guess I should say.
Yeah, that I can't crack either.
Yeah.
I do think it's interesting and worth noting that Bonnie Aarons, who plays the homeless person, like people call her the witch, because she's like all like just dirty and creepy. That's the nun from the Conjuring universe.
Oh, really? I had no idea.
She went on to play the nun, which is like,
yeah, that's cool. Yeah, 15 years
she's incredible.
Later.
Like, she's just she's got like just her physical acting. She could not deliver. She's proven it 3 times now that she can carry a movie without delivering a line.
Yeah, true. I mean, she's probably on screen for maybe 50 seconds total.
But you remember it
with the first. Yeah, you remember her.
You'll never forget
one of the most memorable moments, that diner scene. And also with the atmosphere that he did in that scene. How, like, David Lynch can make 2 people sitting in a diner talking to each other actually scary, actually like build dread. It's a lot through the one guy's acting, but it's just I love that about him. He makes you understand when you're supposed to be scared. But
absolutely.
you just end up scared. You don't think he's doing anything to you in the movie. It's just, I have so been inspired by how he does that. Like, builds the atmosphere, like through just like the formalist approach to filmmaking, how he builds the atmosphere to communicate with your subconscious. I think that's like how David Lynch makes movies and he meditates all the time, and he gets his movies through like his meditation, and it's like he's communicating with his own subconscious, and he's taking things from his subconscious dreaming and his subconscious, or his own like delving into his subconscious mind, and tries his hardest to implement those into his films. Like, that is just so admirable.
Yeah, and he's such a character, like and it's weird because he had a good upbringing. Like, stuff that I highly recommend people checking out. I'm not sure if you have. First of all, that book I mentioned, Room to Dream, that's amazing. But The Art Life, the documentary on him,
I've seen it. Yeah, I have the Criterion. I love it.
Yeah, it's great, and like that's the thing, that doc is just, it's so much a mood. Like all of his films, like they are just, at their core, they are a mood. And I think you mentioned it. He transcendental meditates, and that's something that, like, even reading his book and hearing him talk about it, like, has made me want to give it a try. Because like I tried meditating. I got into meditating a little bit actually when I first started making The Druid's Hand, like when I was just going through a lot at the time, and I was doing it to kind of cope with like anxiety and just trying to. It wasn't for the film at all, but that was when I was getting a lot of work done. And then I fell out of it. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, now here's the writer's block, or, where do you go from here? So it works for a lot of people.
Yeah. The same exact thing happened with me. I fell out of it. I ended up doing it.
It's so hard.
Mostly because, I know, just keeping on that routine, you convince yourself it's not worth your time or whatever. But you
got to do it so many times where nothing's going to work and still stick to it before it starts working. Like, that's the hardest part about it for me.
Yeah. I got into it originally, like transcendental meditation in particular, because of David Lynch. And this was years ago. And I did it consistently for a couple of months and then just fell off. But there was a tangible difference when I was.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because the way David Lynch puts it, I don't get my ideas this way. So it's interesting to hear how other artists get their ideas.
Yeah.
But David Lynch said he likened it to fishing. Like, he sits down and he meditates, and keeping that open headspace of letting a thought come in and then letting it naturally flow through and leave the other side, like keeping that absolute meditative headspace. It's like casting a reel into the water, and you let it sit there, and eventually maybe you'll just catch something.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I never thought of it that way. I guess
it's interesting because I've never heard of another filmmaker coming up with actual ideas that they make into films that way, because you can come up with stylistic ways, really creative ways to end up pushing your stories forward, like scene by scene. But he comes up with overarching ideas through just digging within his subconscious mind. Like that is so interesting to me. Like, I mean, I come up with ideas like, what would I want to see in a movie? How would I make a movie that would be like the most interesting movie possible? And then I think like subconsciously as an artist, that stuff does come through during your actual like execution of it, but not necessarily in the conceptualization. And it's so interesting how he conceptualizes with that part of his mind. And and you can so clearly see it in his work. That's how this whole thing was conceptualized. The whole thing is within Naomi Watts's subconscious, which is within David Lynch's subconscious. It's so cool.
No, and I love that. And it's I feel like that's what makes me I started liking his work even more after I got to know him as a person. And it's because, you know, even when I share this story, it makes it sound like he's pretentious, but I don't feel like he is, because like there's a famous interview where someone like asks him, like, he's like, so many people want to have me here and talk about the movie, but the movie is the talking. And he like laughs at them like that. And it's so true though for him. It's like, and it's the same with someone asked him like, you have said before that Eraserhead is your most spiritual film. And he's like, yeah. They're like, can you elaborate on that? He goes, no. It keeps going, keeps the conversation going. It's just so fucking funny. And I know he actually, I'm not sure if you know about this. I just heard about this because I post about David Lynch a lot. Like I love his every Friday he posts
his weather
his report.
The report,
but it was pointed out to me that apparently he had like there was a point where people are really returning on him because he made a political stance that people thought he was a Trump supporter, and I think that it was completely misunderstood. And
there's no way he's a Trump
there's no way. Like when you look at his movies and like what you can't watch Blue Velvet and tell me that man's that his ideologies align with Trump.
There's no way.
And he did eventually have because he said something like it was taken out of context. He said, I believe that Trump could be the best president of all time. And he did say that, but in it was taken out of context. He was saying like, if he were to turn the ship around and like, you know, if he were to make some different decisions, he's like, you have all this power and you've turned so many people away from each other. Now imagine what you could do with that power that you have.
Right.
But you know, we live in such a reactionary society that people were just so quick. Like I looked up, there were so many people who just got rid of their Lynch, like they turned on him entirely. And I'm like, fuck, that sucks that we live in a world like that where, you know, I don't know. I just wanted to mention that because I did dig deep enough into it to now be comfortable in taking the stance that he is absolutely not a Trump supporter.
There's literally no way he's a Trump supporter. If you know anything about him, he's like impossible.
For sure.
But like about your point of like him not, he doesn't elaborate on the meanings of his movies. It's like he probably couldn't, even if he wanted to. It's these ideas from his subconscious. Imagine someone saying to you like, dig deep within your unconscious desires and fears and then elaborate on that to me. It's like not entirely fair to ask somebody.
No, especially when he is doing that already. He's just showing it in a visual way.
That's the only way to really communicate that. That's why he says like the film is the communication. He can't, it's like a lot of the time people make art because they can't articulate the ideas that they want with words, you know,
especially if you see his work. Like you see, that's what I love so much too about him, his character in Twin Peaks is he's such a joyous, and even when you see him in interviews, you read about him, you listen to him talk, and he's such a joyous human, but he has a horrendous dark side to him that is unlike any other filmmaker out there. And like that's what makes him have such a unique voice. And I absolutely love the dichotomy of what's going on in that man's brain. And something that's what I was getting at with the art life. There's a part where he talks about like his parents were worried because he was like bringing home roadkill. He was displaying signs of like serial killer tendencies. And I love thinking about that he even consciously talks about it in the film, that he's like, he started putting it into his art. Like he was making like a piece and he was like gluing a dead rat or something onto a painting. And it's like, instead of, there very well could be a world where David Lynch turned into be a serial killer, but instead he took all that motivation that like a serial killer would have and put it into his work, into making art. And like, it's a healthy expression of your demons.
And he obviously explores those in his films. Like,
totally.
They're all very dark theme.
No, I love it. And I feel like this is a movie that we could talk for 3 hours and still not even scratch the surface. But I feel like we've done a pretty good job here. Is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of Mulholland Drive? Anything stand out to you that you want to mention?
I guess last thing, blue hair lady.
Yes.
What are your thoughts? Because I don't know.
I have that's one I have no clue.
Okay, cool.
I have no idea. I'm sorry. I wish I could have a theory, but that's one that has slipped past me.
No, that same here. I was hoping we could have some type of dialogue on that, or you could spark something in me, some idea. I have no idea.
I feel like it's just like, it's visually uncomfortable and stands out so much like the cowboy. And like that's pretty much what I take from it is, and then that's how dreams feel. Like, I don't know how many dreams you've had where something is just so incredibly out of place, right? But in that world, it's like, well, it's just your subconscious making it.
It just obviously means something, whether that thing is defined or not. It's obviously relevant, and that could just be its only purpose is to just be obviously relevant.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
No, absolutely. Awesome. Well, this was a blast. It was always great catching up with you, and I'm sure we'll keep doing it as we move forward. Hopefully you make it down to Canada at some point, and vice versa. I make it up to Detroit. The 810, is that what they call it? Is that your area code? 810?
No, we're 313.
Oh, 313. Yeah, sorry. I was thinking about
810 might be.
Everybody in the 313.
There it is.
Yeah, there we go. That makes sense. Awesome, man. Well, where can people follow you? And I specifically like yourself and your film account and your production company.
Thanks so much for letting me plug it really quick. We're called Nain Rouge Productions.
Nain?
Yes, Nain, and then Rouge is spelled Rouge. The Nain Rouge is an old Detroit legend of a little demon that was seen before disaster in old colonial times in Detroit. That's cool. Where it kind of stems from.
That's really cool. I did not know that, but obviously that explains the little devil character.
That's our logo. So we have a little devil logo, if you recognize it. So that's our handle on all socials. We're most active on Instagram, and then that's where you'd be able to keep up with any stuff I make, and then Fake Plastic Blood, which is still on its festival run right now. Fake Plastic Blood, all lowercase, is the handle on Instagram. If anyone was interested in watching that, there will be online screeners through different festivals as it continues in its run.
Absolutely. Do you have one coming up?
We have Shockfest coming up in December 10th. I think December 10th is when it opens up, and then there will be a virtual screening available for about a week, I think, where people would be able to like buy tickets and virtually screen it on there. So if anyone was interested in that information, we also have fakeplasticblood.com and then nainrougeproductions.com. All one word, all lowercase. You could look up any of those.
Yeah. And then Nathan Gallagher Bro.
Yeah, that's my personal Instagram. Nathan Gallagher Bro, all lowercase. Gallagher is Gallagher, like shameless.
Yes. Awesome. Yeah, man. Well, no, it was great. And once again, congratulations on everything. I can't wait to see what comes of Fake Plastic Blood, and also what happens in the future for you and your team. Your whole team is lovely. It was so great getting to know all of you guys. And those last few nights where we were able to hang out with me, you and Christian, it was just a blast. It was great. And
thanks so much for having me on here. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's just, I'm happy we can make it happen, and that you're interested in coming on. So that's
totally.
awesome.
I'm definitely going to start listening because I love to talk film like this. Thanks so much for having me on here.
Yeah, of course, man. I'm happy, and we'll have you back again sometime soon, and maybe we'll talk about some Kubrick.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening to another episode of the Terror Table, and we will see you next time. See you next time. Bye.